Hey there and welcome. Welcome to a little bit of a different style video. Now, recently I got a DM from Murilo Augusto who asked me to make a video or make some sort of media dedicated to talking about my journey in magic. And maybe that could inspire some potential conversation about your stories. But I thought to have it all in one place. And this would be a little bit of a nice time to talk about it. How I got started in magic from the wee beginning. Now, I feel like even though this is sort of my story, it still shares a lot of similarities in most people just because of all the types of personality traits that are attracted to something like magic. Now, like every rambunctious little boy, you gain an interest in weird shit. And one of those, even before my teenage years, was magic. Now, my mother, my grandmother, my brother would all make it an event every year to watch World's Greatest Magic. Now, World's Greatest Magic was a television show produced, I believe, by Gary Roulette throughout the 90s. And every time it would come up, we would make sure to take the time to all watch it together. For some reason, we liked Max Maven because he would do mentalist tricks that pretty much worked through the TV. And we always wondered how he managed to find out which 90s celebrity we were thinking of. The other one was Matt King. He would do some dumb little tricks and show you how to do them. And we would always wait, wondering how he got so close to so many women, considering he was wearing his grandfather's curtains. But even then, it wasn't necessarily serious. It was a passing fad. My mom bought us the Klutz Book of Magic, which was a little bit of a magic book with 20 tricks. It brought a thumb tip. It brought some latex, which you would use to get the dimes through the little latex thing. As a matter of fact, it broke the first time we tried to do the trick. So that was kind of useless. And even a little bit of rope and a ring. But the problem is that I never had the patience to go through the tricks, and eventually it just sat on a shelf and collected dust. Then in middle school, a friend of mine told me that he was going to float. So he was going to show me a trick where he was going to be able to levitate off the ground. But I would have to wait till the end of the day so he could show me this particular trick. And the entirety of the time I was thinking in my head, how is this dude going to be able to float? How is this guy going to be able to levitate his feet off of the ground? And I wondered and postulated how much middle school tail I would get by being able to float down the hallway, and people wonder, hey dude, how are you doing that? And of course I was going to learn the secret. All I had to do was wait till the end of the day. Of course, the leaps in logic in that is astronomical, but I was a dumb young kid. So by the end of the day, we were in the parking lot where the teachers parked their cars, and he told me, all right, just stay where I was standing. And he took one step, he took two steps, and then he took another step, almost like he was some sort of punter. And at that point, I saw both his feet come off the ground, just a little bit, just about that much. I saw both his feet come off the ground and then come back down. And I was very disappointed because even I could tell that he was just standing on his other foot. But he told me that that was a trick from a magician named David Blaine. David Blaine. That's not gonna be the first time you hear that name here, but he pretty much told me about David Blaine. And the next day he showed me a little bit of a card trick, but that got the cogs going in my head. And eventually I bought the book that he learned the trick from, which was Mark Wilson's Guide to Magic. Now the book had really basic card magic, some coin stuff, some rope work, even some big stage illusions. I still have my copy, which was this little ridiculous brick about that big, that wide. Now, while the book wasn't necessarily comprehensive, it got me thinking of methods and trying to come up with my own tricks. As also any other magician growing up around that time period, magic on TV was primarily focused on one individual, David Blaine. He was the only magician with a presence on TV, and a street magic special was something that I practically memorized. I tried to do my best to replicate all the tricks in the special that involved some sort of sleight of hand, and the difficult part that information was few and far between. Online magic was pretty scarce back then, and penguin magic was barely even a thing. But even through that, I would scour through the internet for what was available, which usually consisted of GeoCity sites with awful MIDI soundtracks promising David Blaine's greatest secrets. They would have little pictures of David Blaine with glowing red eyes and would have picture-based tutorials on what had to be the worst variation of the two-card Monty. But that's all I had. When I was looking through the early versions of Penguin Magic, I would look at the effects and I would read them. Oftentimes they were wondrous and blown out of proportion, and I would try to come up with my own methods based on my current existing knowledge of magic. Years later, when I had the means to actually purchase these same videos, I would often be disappointed with the method, always thinking that it would either be better or more elaborate somehow. Now that got me thinking, and the early sort of process as to me realizing that the effect is the most important part. Now, eventually I did get my first magic purchase, which was Jay Sankey's Airtight. I saw the early demo video with Oz Perlman, and I was floored by when he got the card and put it inside of the deck, somehow grabbed that same deck, slammed it through a balloon, and then pulled that card out of the balloon after he inflated it. I watched it over and over again, and I could not for the life of me figure it out. Eventually, I convinced my mom to drop the $8.95 for the small pamphlet through Penguin Magic. And when it got here, I ripped open the package, and I was wondering, I was foaming at the mouth, wondering as to what device is going to allow me to take a deck and slam it through a balloon. But it turns out that when I opened the package, all I saw was a pamphlet and 6 of what had to be the hardest balloons to inflate in my entire life. Was I missing something? Did they forget something? Am I going to have to contact Penguin Magic because they forgot the James Bond device that was going to be able to insert the deck in the balloon without the participants figuring it out? Well, it turns out I learned at an early age that marketing and magic go hand in hand, because I had everything necessary to do the trick. All you needed was a deck of cards and some balloons. So the next step in my magic life was the Art of Astonishment series. Never could I imagine the wonder those books would bring. For years, I would read reviews about the effects in the books, and I would dream about the methods and how I could try to emulate them too. There was one trick, however, that baffled me beyond comprehension, and it was this trick known as counterfeit spectator. David Blaine did this on one of his specials, and what would end up happening is that the spectator gives you a dollar bill, and somehow you would take the dollar bill and rub the Secretary of Treasury's signature, and that would change into the spectator's own signature. I had so many questions. How did they know the name? How did the name appear on the dollar? How did it change on their own dollar bill? So all of these questions were answered upon receiving the book as a Christmas present. I remember giving my mom a bunch of hugs and then excusing myself to go to my room to finally try to figure out how this effect could be possible. Disappointment is what I felt that day. You had to know their name ahead of time. You had to prepare a dollar bill with a knife. You had to switch it for theirs while taking it out of your wallet. I didn't even have a wallet at the time. But it was a very important lesson. Don't get caught up in the hype. That's one of the things I learned from then. The book, however, did completely change my perspective on magic. I had no idea how Paul Harris could come up with the effects that he presented in the book. His approach to magic was daring and refreshing, and it was different. I tried to emulate his style as best as I could interpret it through his words. But eventually, I figured out my own voice in doing tricks. Now, those were the earliest influences I had on my magic, and if it wasn't for that journey, well, I wouldn't be here today, being able to teach you guys and learn from you guys, as a matter of fact. So that was just a little bit of a quick cursory look at my upbringing with magic. Hope you guys appreciated that, and hope to see you in the next video. Hope to see you guys in the next video.